Welcome, everyone, to another morning, another day of green all over this amazing Falls Summit, Zero Waste in the Elemental Body. This is Marita Esteva with the Path of Ish, one who catches lightning. That's really my name. And we are here today. I'm very excited. In studio. We're going to call this in studio. With Rose by Love by Design. Rose hails from California. She did her undergraduate work in interdisciplinary design in SF State. She did her grad school in social welfare at UC Berkeley. She is now a relationship coach and an integrated practitioner. So let's just kind of jump in. Integrated practitioner. You're gonna have to tell us what that means. But let's just jump back into your your history. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? The Rose before undergrad and grad school, and the artist and all of that.
There was no Rose before undergrad. No. I'm just kidding. So I'm born and raised in California. My childhood was definitely had its challenges as well as its blessings. I grew up in a family that has a lot of intergenerational trauma, and that definitely is something that I have carried with me as both sort of a gift and a blessing. And I also grew up very connected to the land, to nature, to, everything in nature, plants, animals. I was like a little fairy child, you know what I mean? Like, my aunt used to tell me that I would go, like when we would walk, I'd go seek out these little like fairy grottos. Like there would be like a spot where the trunks of trees like came together in this way, and there would be ferns, and I would just be like, oh, I'll like go over here. And she's like, oh my gosh, she's a little fairy child. And that is something that I have carried with me through my whole life. The connection to nature. A lot of my spirituality is connected to natural practices. Even though I've been taught a number of different spiritual practices and practices as a healer, I don't know, some people would call it more like shaman work, but I tend to skew towards connection to the natural elements and the natural environment. So actually, this work that you're doing is very apropos for me, the elemental body and connection to nature. I grew up with a lot of connection to my intuition and to spirit. And I actually I was very, very active, but I felt, because of some of the things that I struggled with and went through in my childhood and that were happening in my family, I felt very disconnected from my body for long portions of my life. I was just very highly anxious and afraid and spinning in my head, which is still a challenge for me, as you know well.
Can be.
And so the journey of coming back to connect to my body has been a process for me. My intellect has always been an amazing gift for me, and also a crutch, I would say, at times, because I become over-reliant on my intellect, and it's easy for me to get disconnected from my heart and from my spirit and my center and my body if I'm really overwhelmed, if I'm really stressed. So I have had to find a lot of practices to connect to that in my life.
And so with life as it ebbs and flows, and we come and we go, do you think that your early connection to kind of Mother Earth and those elements has helped you, throughout your challenges, and also, definitely helped you when you were growing up, kind of?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's one of the things actually that I frequently, when I'm considering like what helped me survive the crazy situations that I went through growing up, and actually, some that have sort of continued into my adulthood in some ways. a huge one is my connection to nature and my ability to
Mm.
go out into nature and find calm and find
Mm.
refuge and be at peace, be alone.
Mm.
You know, I did a lot of hiking by myself, and yeah, that's really been like a saving grace for me. That, and then there's been a number of relationships that throughout my life have helped sort of carry me and lift me and give me that resilience that I needed. And then my art, my spirituality, and my connection to nature and are some of the other big pieces that have helped carry me through and reconnect.
Now, this week we've been talking about zero waste, not just as an action, not just living zero waste, like, practices where we're reusing things because we are harvesting the energy of it for as many lifetimes as possible. That's zero waste. You could kind of talked about that. But we've also been talking about zero waste as kind of a concept of non-grasping, as a way to not hold on to rigidness and dogma, even in whether it's your yoga practice doing the same thing. So how is it that you coach people to have a zero waste mentality, almost, not just, as you said, intellectually, but also emotionally, because you are a relationship coach.
Yeah. When you talk about the idea of non-grasping, the thing that immediately comes to mind, and one of the central pieces as I'm thinking about the relationship between self and environment, the relationship between self and other people, as it pertains to zero waste, is a couple things, but the first one that comes to mind is the numbing, how grasping and sort of chasing after things and constantly filling this hole that's never going to be filled up has a lot to do with the process of numbing for the sake of survival. And being disconnected from your body and being disconnected from yourself is very connected to numbing. Sometimes the numbing is a function of survival. You need to numb to be able to go through the lifestyle that you have, the circumstances that you're living in. But other times it's just habitual. It's become so connected to the way of life that we have right now. That process of numbing, of, if I think about, and we've talked about this a lot. If I think about everything that's happening in the world, if I think about the amount of suffering and pain and species extinction and, even if I just think about everything that's involved in my job, the amount of suffering that people have been through, I think it's very easy for people to become overwhelmed and to turn to numbing, which is very much supported by the culture of capitalism, right? It's very oriented on consumption as a way to numb yourself, to be constantly sort of chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
Right. And when I think about like practices that help me heal that, a lot of it, first of all, you have to start very small. Start very small with being mindful of the ways that we numb ourselves. And being mindful of how some of the ways that we numb ourselves are actually more harmful to us than beneficial. Like, if we think about, this habit of Netflix, right?
Netflix and chill.
Right, which I am 100% guilty of. And I love stories, and it's easy to go to if I've had a really oh my God, stressful day, and I need to quickly disconnect from the story, the emotion, whatever's going around in my head. Pop on a show on Netflix, right? But some of the shows we watch are really violent, I mean, a lot of the cop shows, and I love cop shows.
Mysteries, huh?
Mysteries, right? I like
solving
the puzzle. Yeah, it's very satisfying, Yeah. But in the long term,
and they wrap it up at the end, so it's always nice. It's not like your day that keeps going.
Yeah, right.
Unless it's like 2-part,
It's got a neat little bow at the
Yeah,
end.
exactly.
There's some shows that they make it more realistic, and I end up feeling like,
jolted.
damn it, at the end. So, watching television,
Yeah.
there are so many habits and things that get connected to watching Netflix. For
Yeah.
instance, many people, when they watch television, the time goes by really fast.
Mhm.
They've wasted a lot of time that they should have been spending on other things. Most people do not watch 10 minutes of TV to get their mind off of something and then stop. They waste a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
It is not going to be beneficial for you in the long run to watch television. So you are wasting the time that you could be doing other things, like things that are actually good for your body, things that are actually good for your mind, like
Give back to
meditation.
you.
But the television doesn't give back, right?
Yeah.
But that's just one example. And in addition to the fact that it's not actually helping, putting all of that imagery, putting all of that media into your body and your mind, it has an effect that is so invisible to people, because most people never take a break from it long enough to recognize how different their dreams, their relationships, their level of anxiety, how much food they eat on a daily basis, because that's tied to people's eating a lot of the time. They sit in front of their computer or their television and they mindlessly eat. While they mindlessly consume, they try to fill that hole. It's just another aspect of numbing, right?
Well, that's how we were indoctrinated back in the 50s, right?
Yeah,
TV dinners
exactly.
and everything like that. The TV was the new hearth that people gathered around,
And it's like how we treat ourselves, but the ways that we treat ourselves and our bodies, like we, like give ourselves a little like treat yourself, like actually are more harmful to our bodies than helpful. And they disconnect us from our relationships.
Yeah, TV definitely does that. I've struggled with TV watching. My father made a big point in growing up that he would give us times where we could watch things, and he was very careful about what we watched. So hence I watched a lot of musicals growing up.
I watched Terminator movies growing up, and a lot of James Bond.
Exactly.
So.
Well, James Bond too later.
And
but,
Sesame Street, which
there you
is
go.
amazing.
Have you seen that whole Bert and Ernie thing? They're just friends.
Wait. No, I haven't seen. I saw a post about it, but I haven't seen it. Well, that's a sidebar.
That's a sidebar. That's a sidebar. That's not kids sidebar. So let's not do a sidebar right now. But I want to go back to this idea that you started talking about. I know someone earlier in the week or during the week talks about capitalism and the connection to suffering. But I want to tie it back into single servings. But more into relationships as kind of this what you've kind of created. What I see is kind of how a lot of it is how we make ourselves disposable. When we become a single serving, when we're creating value on things, how we devalue ourselves. So when we devalue ourselves, right, because we're talking about zero waste, the reason that there's so much waste is that people don't value an object and how many lifetimes it can have. Like, the wine bottle that can be cut down to make a candle, that take the candle wax out when you're done with it, that can be your cup. Like, it has many lifetimes, right? So unless we create value, that thing will be disposed of. And so I think I'd love to kind of jump in with you on this conversation of how that has translated into interpersonal relationships.
Absolutely.
How we've gotten to that point where we are making ourselves disposable. And I know I've done that in parts, and in romantic relationships, and in other relationships, in work relationships. So let's jump into the single serve relationship.
Well, immediately what it ties back to for me is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, which is the fact that why are relationships so disposable for us now, right? And part of why relationships, and this is not to say for everybody, but if you think about life in a really small town, we live in kind of a small town. The access to resources is different than living in a big city. we don't have tons of internet companies to choose from. We only have one garbage company. There's only one person that does this, one person that does that, right? You have to have relationships with the people that provide you things. You know, you have to find a way, otherwise you don't get to have garbage service. Like that most people,
True.
their lives are not like that anymore. You know,
Or they don't even think about it because they live in buildings and they just throw something down a chute,
and
right?
because there's when we were living in when there was a lot less humans on the earth, and that things were not so globalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
When people knew where their food came from, when people were more connected to the source of the things that they needed, relationships were more essential. That you had no choice. You had to rely on the people that were there to help you, and you had to have relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, many people, it depends on where you live and what part of the world that you're in and what type of city you're in. But if we're talking about big urban areas that have a lot of goods that are coming from all over the world, that are having, stuff packaged in stores, you never meet the farmer. Kids don't even know carrots come out of the ground. Like, there's no sense of
that meat comes from an animal.
Right. There's no sense of relationship with resources or with people or with anything. So everything is very disposable. And I would say, of course, that cultural value is going to be mirrored at every level.
Yeah.
So it's going to be mirrored on the individual level. It'll be mirrored within, interpersonal relationships. It'll be mirrored at the community level. And that's definitely what we're taught in terms of like employment as well in businesses, that we're disposable, right? That I think it depends on what type of job that you do, but for the most part, we live in a culture where it's like grind you up and spit you out in terms of like the employment practices. I was just talking to somebody the other day. It was like, it seems like every job is getting more demanding, more higher expectations, less breaks, more, faster, better, longer hours. Like the length of hours that some people work is like not human. You know what I mean? We could become very disconnected.
So do you think that, is it Sweden that has really good like ecological policies, like to the point that like they're like buying other people's garbage to burn? Is it Sweden?
I think it might be
somewhere in the Netherlands. Maybe it's in the Netherlands. And then they're actually promoting people to Denmark.
I don't know which one it is.
Viking land. They're also promoting people like people to like sew things and fix shoes. Like they put a whole mall, and they have an amazing connection to nature, just being where they are. It's just been in their culture, and they're to that point where their work weeks are much shorter.
4-hour work week.
4 hour. That would be nice. I don't think 4 days.
The dream.
Right. I think 4 to 5 days. The work weeks are smaller because they want people to interact with nature and to have relationships. So I think there's something there.
You think?
Maybe we should move. There's something there. A connection to nature means a respect for the self, right? Means that you're working less because you're actually, all that time that you spend on Facebook and all those wasted moments of going to the water cooler and making your coffee because you're trying to not work, or you're just trying to have those small moments to yourself. We could just like pack it in, and then you could go outside and play. I like this. It reminds me of like when I was in 3rd grade. Like I do my homework and I just go and play. I was the first one done all the time. And then I'm like, peace, see ya.
Yeah. There's so many other conversations that could be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
I do want to come back to something else that in terms of relationships and disposability. First of all, I don't know if you've seen, there's this sort of trend going around the internet where people will say, if this person doesn't lift you up and, then toss them aside, and I think the tricky thing about that is, while I do agree that surrounding ourselves with people who are going to uplift us, who are going to be encouraging to us
Hmm.
is very
Hmm.
important. But what I see is that people are so people's attention spans have shortened so
Mm.
much that people sometimes interpret that to mean like if your friend is going through a hard time at any moment and they're being a Debbie Downer because they're
Mm.
depressed because something horrible happened in their lives and they're maybe not being the most socially appropriate person because they're filled with anxiety and like sadness, then it's like, well, you're not lifting me up. Get out of my life.
Yeah.
You're not good for me. You're hurting me. You're a
Yeah.
negative person.
Yeah.
And it's not about that short 1 moment snapshot of is this person a happy person? It's like people lift us up in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the power of a relationship in a moment.
Hmm.
That is powerful, but the relationship over time where people lift each other up over time,
Hmm.
where part of the ways that we're lifted up is by growth, is by being better people through the
Hmm.
people around us, is
And
by
by being challenged by them, right? Not,
absolutely,
I mean, I
absolutely.
did, the other day I did this, do this little attitude of gratitude to kind of change vibration. I was like, just because we're trying to be positive here doesn't mean that I'm going to stop posting like the horrific things happening.
Oh no, of
It
course.
doesn't mean, because you still have to be able, you have to be able to live in that dualism, because it all teaches us, it all reminds us. Because I remember I posted something about, in North Carolina had that horrible, Florence and everything, and there were some people who were able to escape. Some people were lined up to get animals out of there, domestic animals. The guy in his little Noah's Ark, and then there's the farm animals that were left to die, and 3.2 million,
Wow.
chickens
Ugh.
and pigs left to die and to starve. And someone who was in that area was like, "Why did you post this? What does this do for us?" And I'm like, "That it challenges us. It challenges to understand that natural disasters don't just happen to humans or your domestic animal. It's happening to everyone. It happens to everyone. It affects everyone. And so we can be challenged to maybe change how we're using our resources,
Yeah.
where we're planting our farms, or how we're consuming, chickens and pigs and things like that,
Mhm.
because they're not valued, and someone earlier this week talked about, who's very faith-based, talked about how they want to get to the end of their life and say that they were stewards of the land, not dominion over,
Mm.
because there's that as well, the dominion over plants and animals. But no, it's
Yeah.
stewardship. It's co-creation. We have to start realizing that we are co-creating. Whether your friend online is having a really hard time, are you going to co-create with them, or are you going to cut them off?
Mhm.
Are they disposable? Are they not? Because they're bringing down your
Yeah,
vibe, your
exactly.
flow. You're like, dude, you're
Psh.
messing with my mojo over here. But
I'm sorry. I saw something unhappy. I'm pretty sure you just complained on your Facebook feed. Nobody needs to see that. You're such a downer. Like
yeah,
that I can't, it's amazing to me how so much of Facebook, maybe this is just what I don't think this is just my feed, because I'm pretty like conscientious about what I like and what I don't, to try to be like, this is what I want my feed to be filled with. I don't want my feed to be just filled with happy things from happy people. I
mm-hmm.
want to know when my friends are having a hard day and reaching out for, support and love, or
Mm-hmm.
just being vulnerable or sharing their victories. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing all of that. I don't care if people if people post their workout. I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate that stuff. I do think that's a good way to use social media. You know, I think it is very challenging for people to have certain things put in their face when they feel very powerless. But the reality is that, I think because, and when we talk about zero waste, I think it's very common for people to feel overwhelmed and
Yeah.
sort of feel powerless, and also to feel that, my one change, how much of a change is my one
yeah.
change going to make, right? And the thing is that's exactly how people feel about their own lives when they've been through a huge amount of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at their lives and they think, so what if I make it to this one thing on time and I go like do an intake for mental health services, or I, talk to a relationship coach on like some free call. Like what kind of a difference is that really going to make,
Yeah.
to be honest? Because here's the whole dump truck of my life. That is the story that I'm bringing to this moment. How is this one tiny thing going to make a difference? You know, and I think it's easy for people to feel the same about the changes that they make in their own lives and the impact on the planet. You know, how is it going to make a difference for me to know about this horrible, horrible thing that's happening to all of these farm animals that are drowning in captivity?
Why talk about it?
Why is that? But the reality is, it could actually plant a seed to make a small change that will still be change, because every moment you're making a choice to do something. You're either making a choice to continue to consume in the way that you consume, to continue to live in the way that you live, to relate to yourself in the way that you relate to yourself, unchanged, or you can choose to change in many different directions. But either way, something is happening. Yeah. There is an impact no matter what direction you change. Yeah. So, you know, making those little changes do matter.
Such as, like, I'll give an example that comes to mind when you're saying that. You know, sometimes we say, how small is small? I remember one time being faced with just the reality that there was a lot of people gossiping around me. You know, gossip is, you know, people gossip. It's, you know, it's that juicy conversation. Like, and that's the thing. Gossip is juicy. It's like delicious. It's like savory. It's like, yum. You know, you like mouth is like dripping and stuff.
It's a
like
very
that.
Like activating
emotion, right? And I just remember one time being like, wow, my whole the way that I'm communicating with people to in my work or whatever to get things done is through gossip, and that's so much time wasted, and I don't even know that much gossip. So I remember just one time I just remember one time, but you know how you like try to make something juicy, you're like, well, I heard, you know. I just remember one time I was like, I'm going to stop doing this. And so I remember, you know, getting in the car with someone or having a conversation with someone, and they started getting into it. And I was like, you know what? I don't know. And you know, does this really pertain to this? And let's talk about something else. And it changed everything. You know, you can make small decisions like that. And what I started to realize is that my life started clearing up a lot. I had more space to have conversations, and it was also almost a relief to the other people that were involved, because like, oh, we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like permission.
And permission to be themselves. So then I'd ask them a really like a personal question. Why don't you tell me about you and what's going on? And they just didn't even know what to do with it, because this gossip was like a facade of, you know, I know something, right? I have information. I am valuable now, right? And hiding behind that instead of being just who I am is valuable because of who I am. And I might be struggling and things like that. I know single serve.
Oh, no, right? Honey. No, you are not. They broke the mold with this one. Let me tell you, people. It's interesting that you say that, because, you know, I think when you describe that, what I imagine, and I feel it like when I think about the way that it feels for me when I get like pulled into those kind of like, oh my, blah, 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 blah. It's like all the strings of your personality, of your life, you're getting all like tangled together, and you're in this knot, and you're just like making it tighter and tighter, and it's really satisfying. And then somebody has to have the courage to just like take the scissors and cut it, and you drop it, and then you have this chance for something totally fresh. You know, and if we think about that, if we think about how we habitually the ways that we habitually connect with other people that don't help us actually feel that sense of belonging, that true connection helps us feel.
All that kind of
it's
surface.
Well, it's, I don't know if it's surface exactly, but it definitely doesn't involve a lot of real vulnerability. And without, if you're connecting with, and this actually, science has found this to be true, at least qualitative studies, if you are connecting with somebody else over negatively talking about another person, you're not actually developing a true sense of belonging. You don't actually feel the same as if you connect with people over something that is about you as
Mm.
people connecting to each other,
Mhm.
not connecting over feeling,
Mhm.
talking badly or
Mhm.
negatively about another person. It
Mhm.
doesn't make you feel safer or more connected to that person. It does give you this weird sense of connection, but it's not the same as the true feeling of belonging, of like being seen and loved for who
Yeah.
you are.
Grounded.
Not at all. And if you think about how that type of relationship is mirrored on the individual level internally, the language that we use towards ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we judge ourselves, what we see as being beneficial, again, it's sort of this like fast food version of true connection. You know, it's not really,
Yeah.
there's no substance. It just has like a lot of flavor added to the top that they
Mhm.
came up with because
Colorings.
they're so brilliant at like making cardboard taste like a cheeseburger. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
True.
So yeah, it's a different feeling.
So, kind of what we've been dancing around a lot throughout the week. Well, not dancing. It's actually came up. I didn't know it was going to come up.
Dancing.
So, dancing in the night. No, that's Strangers in the Night.
Oh.
But that came up throughout the week is this concept of radical self-love.
Mm.
I didn't know. I thought I was, when I started doing this, I was doing, definitely I wanted people to connect to the earth, to connect to the elements, understand that when you're, having good boundaries and you are yourself and you're recognizing the earth inside of you, and it helps create this different kind of relationship. But the passionate stories that people have talked about, radical self-love, that journey of radical self-love, I think I should rename, the summit. The summit should be radical self-love.
Too late now.
Too
But
late,
I'm
right?
all in favor.
But let's talk about that. Let's talk. You were talking about vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
The way to really connect with another human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mother Earth,
Mm-hmm.
is to be vulnerable. And for me, what comes up is something that I know I talked with someone earlier in the week about asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Being vulnerable enough to be okay that I don't know this. I don't know how to solve this. I don't know where I am. I need help.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm trying to drag you down, but because I'm trying to.
Exactly. Get off of
exactly
me!
Right. Exactly. So let's talk about your own journey of radical self-love and how that's been able to unite you to other people, to yourself, to create better boundaries, and then we'll go from there.
God, I'm like, where to
how much
start,
time do we have?
How deep down the rabbit hole should we go? Well, first of all, I just want to say, and this is something that I didn't know until fairly recently, but I think about my story of like self-love and healing in this context is that I don't know if have you ever heard of the ACEs study? Anybody who's in like social work has probably heard of this study a million times. Nadine Burke Harris, I think, is the doctor who did it. But it's basically the idea that they finally did this retrospective study where they checked to see the correlation between the number of like different types of childhood traumatic events that you'd had and the long-term health and like physical health and mental health outcomes. And they saw a huge correlation between having, even when they like controlled for other factors, having a certain number of what they called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, dramatically raised your likelihood of having like heart disease and all of these physical health problems, as well as a lot of like mental, or what somebody would say maybe behavioral health, both in terms of like having diagnoses that are, having to do with anxiety and depression and all these other things, but also like substance use and all of that. However, what they don't talk about when most people talk about this study, and I saw this amazing presenter, Bruce Perry, he's fantastic. I think he's like oh my God, I don't even know, I'm going to say the wrong title. Anyway, look him up, Bruce Perry, amazing. He talked about how when you control when you add in the impact of people who had positive, supportive relationships in their lives, it actually completely undid the impact of this trauma on people's long-term health and well-being.
Wow.
So no matter how many horrible things happened to you as a child or growing up, if you had sometimes even one or two positive, supportive relationships in your life, it could completely change your ability
Wow.
to be resilient.
Wow.
Physically and mentally, and I would say spiritually as well, but they didn't exactly talk about that in the study. So when I think about my own journey towards radical self-love, I always think about it through that lens, because I had a very challenging childhood environment, and I had a lot of gifts in it, like I said, connection to nature, but it was a really, really painful environment to grow up in. And I 100% doubted myself. I never, everything I did was wrong. It was really unpredictable. And, you know, that damaged me and changed me in a way that I'm still dealing with today. You know, and I may keep dealing with for the rest of my life in different ways, right? You know, if you're not growing, you're dead. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Self-love for me, it's interesting because I feel like looking back, I did have the ability to question the reality that I was being taught, you know, and part of that had to do with the people that were around me, had to do with the fact that I saw other people being in relationship in different ways, that I had other people telling me that I was loved, that were safer people, right? But the process for me has been slow, and it's hard for me to even quantify it. I just know that it feels to me like every relationship that I have, every job that I have, every sort of like major milestone in my life that's happened, every, you know, every kind of like big leap or like chunk of my journey, I realize has been a stepping stone for me. And initially, and what happens usually is what I've seen happen, especially in relationships. I remember thinking this a lot. Like my first serious partnership, I remember feeling like my partner didn't see me at all. My partner did not, you know, maybe there was some small part, but my partner didn't see me. My partner didn't even have the capacity to really like pay attention to another person and like focus on them. And that I had chosen that, you know, that at that time it felt safer for me to start with somebody who was not going to see me, because I felt, yeah, I felt safer. You know, it was like this, it was like the first step away from living in the home that I grew up in terms of like, what does a serious partnership look like? I mean, I'd had, you know, I had this sort of like, you know, relationships and nothing that was like really committed until that first committed relationship. It really, I remember leaving it and being like, of course I picked somebody that wasn't going to see me. I don't want to be seen. I don't even know who I am or what I want. You know, I have no idea what I want. I've been so shaped to make myself whatever the other person needed or said they needed or was feeling, right? You know, and so the journey for me of radical self-love has been a lot about connecting back to myself, who I am, what I want, being able to acknowledge it and share it with other people without shutting it down, because I was so afraid, you know, so afraid of, I mean, really, when it starts when they're that young. I remember I had to talk through this with my therapist because I didn't even know what to call it. I just remember being like, when I go and confront people, like when I have disagreements and confrontations, particularly like certain types of people who lack self-awareness, who have a really quick temper, I feel like I'm dying. Like, I
Hmm.
physically feel like my body is dying. I feel like I
I've been
am
there.
terrified of death.
I've been there.
There's
Yeah.
no words. And she's like, that's because you started being afraid before you had verbal language. You
Wow.
were afraid from the time that you were a baby that you weren't going to survive.
Yeah.
Because when you are threatening your connection with your caregiver as a child, that means death.
Yeah.
You
That
know?
makes
So,
sense.
like, my journey of self love has been about courage.
Hmm.
It's been about courage.
Mhm.
Courage to walk away from the things that are not working for me and to actually take space from things and not be just paralyzed by my fear of rejection and being not connected to anybody, you know, not having community, being able to walk away and move on to something different, which is not to say, like, I have friends that I've had for a very long time in my life, and I think that that's an amazing gift, but like, being able to leave my home and be, you know, move away so that my family couldn't just show up at my door.
Yeah.
You know, being able to separate from my exes and tell them, you know what, I need to not talk to you for a while. I just need some space.
Yeah.
Part of my ability to integrate the lessons that I've learned, the next step that I was at in terms of loving myself and knowing myself has been because I took some space to be able to figure it out. Like, I had to have that space to integrate in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hence, you're an integrated practitioner.
Gosh, you know, that's just how my brain, everything is connected to me.
Yeah.
That's so yeah, it's an ongoing journey. I don't know. That's probably not an end answer, but I feel like I could talk forever. So
No. But I want to integrate one more thing into this.
Yes.
Because
Connection
is
got some good underlighting happening
I
right now. I'm
know,
excited about it.
I know.
Like the golden hour has ended, in case
hour.
anybody's wondering. So now we're
Exactly.
going for the, I don't know,
Hopefully
Halloween
there's
hour.
Something. Hopefully we have enough light, right?
It'll
to get
be
this
fine.
We're nearing the end, anyways. So I want to add one piece of the puzzle, because I know you like puzzles, to everything radical self-love.
Puzzles.
You are a gardener.
Yes.
And you have been a gardener all your life. You've always been kind of growing things, you know? So I want to kind of talk about that and how that's kept you connected and kept you sane, and, you know, that connection too. Because, as you know, you're saying how it was really challenging to create boundaries in your life and stuff, like, there was a part of you that was helping plants grow, you know, being in touch with nature and growing with her in that way. So I'm just going to lob that up for you.
It's such an interesting connection to draw. So
I draw interesting connections.
I mean, in terms of being a gardener, it's kind of funny. I think about it not at the same level of being an artist, because I've always been an artist. And so, you know, it's funny because even when I don't make art for like a year or more, I'm like, oh, I'm still an artist. Like, there's no question in my mind.
Yeah.
For me, gardening and working with plants, working in the yard, working with my hands, it's almost like that. It's like, it just has always been. It's not like something that I have to, I'm like, of course, like, I just always have done that. I'm like, what? There's an option for me not to do that? That's not real. Like, for me, gardening, first of all, I love plants. I love growing things. The satisfaction of growing things is like, it's amazing. It's really sad, actually, that we're so disconnected from the process of like growing in our own food, and you know, because it is so amazing. And I know you like experience this joy sometimes too, because we talk about it, like what it's like to plant this little tiny seed in the ground, and then you know, you kind of like, you know, nurture it a little bit and do things, and some seeds you really don't have to do much, and other ones like need a lot of attention and special care, but for the most part,
just like relationships.
Just
gonna put it out there.
Nature does the work, right? For the most part, nature does the work. So and then this amazing plant grows, and maybe there's flowers, maybe you get to eat the food. It's so satisfying. And for me, gardening has been a similar refuge to my art, to hiking. You know, it for me is just, there's these certain areas of my life that are very intuitive and natural, and they're just always going to be a part of who I am, and gardening is like that for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love beautifying a space.
Mm-hmm.
If I like, I remember when I moved out of my parents' house, the first place that I lived was in the South Bay, in the Bay Area. It was in San Jose. And the backyard was this tiny little square of like sun-baked concrete, and then I think the rest was like tan bark or something. There was like, I think there was a bougainvillea, but the rest was just
nothing,
bark, you know, because it's easy to maintain and low water or whatever. And I totally transformed that yard, you know.
Wow.
And every place, most places that I've lived that have had some type of yard, I always try to leave something beautiful when I leave, because first of all, it brings me.
Or you travel with it like a lemon tree.
Some of it does come with me. There's been some plants that have made it through a few moves. It's the process is also incredibly grounding for me. You know, when we talk about the process of grounding, you know, and people say meditate on this thing that makes you feel grounded, there's a cord that goes down into the earth. I think that that's amazing. And for me, what has been very grounding and helped me connect to my body, as you know, I said that was kind of a struggle, and connecting to your body is like an essential part of having a healthy relationship with yourself and having a healthy relationship with the earth and with others. Doing physical activities like gardening, like cooking, things that are, you know, that where I use my hands and I'm repetitive and there's something physical that I'm doing, for me, that is far more grounding than doing like a meditation on grounding, because you're physically grounding yourself in your body and to the earth. So it's been, I mean,
it's been a solace.
Oh, it's been amazing. I mean, you know, I get very attached to my plants, though. That's the only downside. They're like my babies, you know. So I have to like,
don't touch my baby.
Calm down, okay.
So we are almost nearing the end of the hour.
I don't want it to end.
I know. I know. Oops, it is 10 full days of this. Amazing. I know. So as we approach fall, I mean, this is one of the reasons that we're doing this, is kind of to herald in fall. Herald in. Do you like doo doo doo?
I do. I love it. Your visuals are amazing.
I know. Yeah. Anyways, we won't go into that. But let's. Do you have any? You know, I hate. You know, I've been asking people for like tips and tricks. You know, because people always want that. You know, the 5-minute remedy, and there is no 5-minute remedy. You know, maybe
sign up for my class and I'll give you a 5-minute remedy.
There you go. Ditch the drama, right? Your
5-minute remedy for everything.
Exactly.
I will solve all your problems in 5 minutes.
And we got 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
You know why?
Then
30 seconds to chop off your head, and then the rest is me just having a cocktail. That's the only way to solve your problems in 5 minutes. Okay.
You're like, well, because an average
just
good
kidding.
cocktail.
I'm not a violent person, I swear. So anyway.
Exactly. Because a good cocktail takes at least 4.5 minutes to make, at least.
And I was just talking about the drinking part.
No. Oh, the drink.
Sipping.
There you go. But what are, you know, the holiday seasons are coming upon us. You know, we were all summer, fall, back to like craziness, and then all of a sudden it's gonna be holidays and people are gonna start freaking out about their relationships as it happens. And we will have a winter summit if I can survive this one. But what can you tell people as this change of seasons happening? You know, everyone went from, again, being in their outside beach bodies, running around, vacationing, being distracted by things, maybe also, you know, dealing with their families on family vacations, and they're kind of getting back into their life, I guess you could say. What are things that can keep us connected to ourselves, to the earth, and continue to not grasp, to keep letting go, to have zero waste, you know, so that we can actually have human connection, have connection with the earth. So
Yeah. That's a lot to cover.
I know. So
I'm just gonna start.
give me a very like condensed. Like,
So there's some of the tips that I would suggest are general tips,
Yeah,
but some
let's
of
do
them
it.
are specific to the changing of the season. So I just want to start there. First of all, you know, for many people, I'm definitely one of those people. The shortening of days impacts mood and energy a lot, and it impacts, you know, for some people, like I have remember, and my body remembers having really intense periods of seasonal depression over the
Yeah.
holidays when I lived in places where there was no light. I, you know, like I lived in a basement
'Cause we
room
keep
for one
losing light
winter,
here.
or, you know, there's, I would say just be mindful. You know, if you find yourself, that's really bright now.
Wow.
If you find yourself
Can't have it all.
short-tempered, short energy, you know, that the way that you're interacting with people is changing, just stop and remember that the shortening of the days, the changing of the seasons is a factor, you know. So, you know, sometimes it's like the simple things that we forget. Like we're in an argument and we're like, why am I here again? Well, it's tied into my karma, and it's tied into like this person who got a hook in me, and it's tied into my childhood trauma. And it's like, well, why don't you drink a glass of water
Yeah.
and have a sandwich, and then we can revisit whether this is tied into your karmic akashic files, like, you know, childhood trauma,
Yeah.
or whether it's, you know, you just need some food, some rest, some water, the light is going away. Like, it's very common for people's, you know, biorhythm to change. Yeah, so that's the first tip. Be aware of that, and be gentle with yourself, and just remember that that's a piece. You don't have to overanalyze everything. The other thing I would say is, there's going to be a theme here: be gentle with yourself. The other thing I would say is, for a lot of people, the holidays can bring up a lot of tensions. There can be a lot of really positive things associated with the holidays, with family, but there may also be like tensions and things that come up, and you know, memories live in our minds, but they live in our bodies too.
True.
You know, they live in our spirits. And so again, when you're coming up on the holidays, if you know, find yourself feeling anxious or sad, or, you know, you have these kind of feelings in your body and you're not sure why, just remember that things can live in our bodies for a very long time. And they can also cross generations. You know, things get passed down to us. Memories, experiences of place, traumas connected to a place. So to be gentle with yourself, to take time to be slow. I know that our lives are very, very busy. So when people talk to me, they're like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
What has been very helpful for me in the fall is it's an opportunity, sort of going into winter, to try to, as you're getting back into the thick of things, if summer has been a time of like rest and relaxation, now is the time to try to integrate some very small routines, rituals into your daily practice. You know, for me, it's very important for me to integrate rituals that are about connecting to myself, and connecting to my intuition, and connecting to spirit, and having a positive relationship with myself. And it's very important for me to integrate rituals that are connected to connecting to my partner and connecting to my community, you know? So this is the moment to do that before we get into the thick of the holiday season. Things get away from you. You're like so busy and overwhelmed. I mean, different people's work sort of ebbs and flows at different times of the year. But set up a morning practice, set up an evening practice, integrate something into your day as a regular routine. And by the time you get to like the middle of the school semester or the middle of the holidays, where, you know, it's November and Thanksgiving is coming, it's going to be a habit for you at that point. It's not going to be as much of a struggle. And those little things those little spaces for self-love, for, quietness, they're going to carry you through the winter. They will help carry you through the winter. And they will also help you to be, if we're thinking about consuming and being in a place like the holiday season in the United States is like intense in terms of the process of consumption. If you have those moments of slowness and quiet, breathing, connecting to yourself and your intuition, you will naturally be more mindful about how you consume. And I'm not saying you will suddenly become a vegetarian or you'll, whatever, make these radical changes. That's a choice that you have to make for yourself. But by slowing down, you will consume less naturally.
Because you matter.
You're not going to be numbing yourself out as much because you've created the space to take care of yourself. Yeah. So that is where it all starts. It all starts right here.
Yeah.
So that nonviolence to the self, treating the self as like a subject that matters.
I love that. Yeah.
That's where it begins. And then it spreads outward to treating the other creatures in the world as subjects, not objects. Treating the animals that drown, right? Treating them as subjects. Yeah. Treating them as creatures that have their own will and their own lives. What if we treated rocks and trees and plants in this way where they were worthy of the respect that we pay to another human being, which is already kind of stretching it because, right, that's an issue between people too, objectifying people. Yeah. But the more that we can treat people as subjective, the more we can talk to ourselves and our bodies. Like, you're not just here to do things for me, but like, thank you. Thank you for everything that you give me the possibility to do. Thank you for waking up this morning. It'll change how we consume and how we relate to everything. So
beautiful. Slow down. Don't grasp. Start small. Start here. Be yourself. Rose, thank you for all that insight, that vulnerable insight, and sharing your story with us. If you want to work with Rose, there is an opportunity to work with her. There's a link. There's a hyperlink. Is always every day is that name that's highlighted. The underscore is a hyperlink to either pages, web pages, schedulers, or anything like that. So it's not just because I decided to underline everything, but that is a hyperlink. If you want to enjoy this,
a lot of underlining.
Really
mean it.
Exactly. It is a hyperlink. Also, if you would like, if you've missed a part of this or you want to watch it on your own time, you can upgrade. $65 gives you all of the 10 talks at your leisure time, and also bonus features. I've seen the bonus features. They're quite amazing, and they're still trickling in. People are doing mantras, they're doing meditations, they're doing do your own DIY, right? That's what it is.
Do it yourself.
Do it yourself. See, I don't even know. Do it yourself with Zero Waste Chica coming up later this week. So packed full of a lot of information. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rose, and stay in touch.
Very funny. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.